Good afternoon. My name is Bob Day, and I'm with the St. Paul Museum here in Randleman, North Carolina. This afternoon, Andy Compton is going to speak to us about the restoration work he's been doing here at the museum.
Hi, my name is Andrew Compton, and I'm an architectural paint conservator. I've been restoring the finishes in the painted apse at St. Paul's Church in Randleman, North Carolina. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been doing here. An architectural paint conservator investigates painted finishes in buildings and sometimes on furniture, and in my case, historic buildings around the U.S.
Who contacted you for this particular job here in Randleman?
I was contacted by Louise Hudson and Peggy Woodleaf to help investigate and restore the apse here at St. Paul's in Randleman.
Wonderful, wonderful. And is there any projected date as to when this may be completed, or is this something that's in the air as it goes, or?
Yes, it is. It is a It's a slow process to restore any building because it's expensive, it's time consuming, and in the case of independent, in the case of buildings that aren't supplied by federal grants, it's a very slow process for fundraising.
And where are you out of?
I'm out of Eflin, North Carolina.
Eflin, okay. And where exactly is that located close to?
It's just right outside of Chapel Hill.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
Oh,
So your job is to paint this whole interior of the church, correct?
well, my real job is to investigate all the painted surfaces and determine what the original painted surface looked like, and what the artist's hand looked like when the building was finished in 1879.
Wow, that takes a lot of work. A lot of work.
It does, and it starts by taking very small samples and looking at them under a microscope.
So that's how you match the paints.
That's how we initially discover what the original layers, which layers are original, and what color each layer was based on key dates in history.
Were there many layers of paint on the wall?
There are about 6 generations of paint on the wall. So, in terms of a historic building, that's really not that many. So
Really?
Quite often it's up to 20, 25 layers of paint that you're looking through to try and determine which is the original and which is.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you go about getting through each layer like that? How do you?
Well, the initial process is actually just taking a small sample about the size of a pinhead and actually putting it in a resin and then grinding it down so that you're looking at the side profile of the paint chip. And it actually looks a lot like this under a microscope. Can you see that? So when the paint chip's under the microscope, on its side you can see all of the layers, including this would be the plaster, and this would be the first layer, second layer, and so on. And so if you're right now you're looking at all 6 layers of paint that were actually found in the apse here at St. Paul.
Wow.
And I have a colleague, Amelia Jensen, that actually took the samples and looked at them under a microscope for me.
So you're doing so you're going back through the last layer to
right.
make it original?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Start from the top, and what I do is I take this information and this information also tells me which layers were oil, and which layers were latex, and which layers were distemper.
Right.
And so I know what chemicals I can use to actually go through each layer without damaging the layer behind it. Now, in the case of distemper, that's remarkably difficult because almost everything will take it off the wall because it's so fragile. In this case, it's a soft distemper, meaning it had animal skin glue or animal hide glue mixed into pigment and applied to the wall as a paint. And over time, it actually breaks down and becomes very friable or very, very weak. And what happens is it's something that can't be repaired without using. We have modern techniques for restoring it or consolidating it now, but back when St. Paul's was, when the decoration was overpainted, they didn't have a way to conserve it and preserve it for later generations, so they just painted over it to clean the building up for its next 20 years.
Wow. So how long has it taken you to prepare this particular surface right here behind you?
Well, I've been back and forth for about a year, so it's even though I've been here back and forth for about a year, the whole process is really only a 4 or 5 week process when you put it all together. What we have on top is what we believe is a 1926 iteration of the Ten Commandments and the Lord's Prayer. And yesterday when I was removing some of the loose paint off the surface, I noticed that beneath it is the original Ten Commandments and the Lord's Prayer. So it's just in a slightly different position, but it's all there. And so the question is, do you preserve it behind the layers of paint, or do you
I see what you're
restore it
saying.
and remove the layers? And you know, you're always looking to the future. Is there going to be a way to remove all this without damaging what's underneath, or are you doing more damage by leaving it and allowing the moisture that's penetrating to actually push more of the original work off of it? And I see this is very solid right here, and it's not going to want to come off. Now, what happens with that? Probably this was already an area where the original paint was missing, and the new modern layer of paint is actually adhered to the wall better than
So-
the other areas because they had more of the original
Right.
on there, which
So
wants to come off the
you
wall.
could actually destroy it if you tried to remove it.
That's exactly right, yes.
So it's best just to keep that and go with it.
In any cleaning and conservation, there's always a little bit, I mean, even if it's imperceptible, there's always a little bit of destruction to the original that happens. So it's a really big question about how to go about conserving it.
Can you tell how old that paint is as to maybe when that layer was done?
Well, we believe this layer was, this one right here that we're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
we believe this layer was done in the early 1920s when they removed all the partitions for the school. And so they painted over the top of what was the original, which was protected and covered up until that point. So we do believe that this, I know just by working on it, that there are fewer layers of paint up here than there are down below. So we know that this particular part of the building was protected for quite some time. This is the 1920s bronze band, and just beneath it there's actually a gold band which looks like gold leaf over a size, which is a new discovery for us, which is really exciting. Also here, once again, looks like there's a size and gold leaf behind the newer scheme from the 1920s. So
It's interesting.
it's exciting to know that it's actually there, because for most of my time here, I wasn't sure that the Lord's Prayer and the Ten Commandments were actually behind this at all. So this is a restoration, or a sample restoration of the colors that were uncovered doing an entire window exposure, which uncovered, you can see right here, these are actually the fluted columns that run down. And I was able to uncover enough colored information to actually reproduce which it's a little bit of an interpretation, but the colors are all very close, and the hand is very close to what the original looked like based on what we had found here and around the building. So it's very dramatic, it's very rich compared to what we see on the walls right now, which is almost like a layout design that we've been able, that's been uncovered over time.
So is this one of the originals from the very first painting?
This is what the first painting would look
Okay.
like, yes. Now my paints are over the top of their paints. There are some areas that are the original there that I've painted around, but there's probably about 10 to 15% of the originals showing right now in this restored
Wow.
window. So this is an exposure I've made by removing layers of paint down to the original surface. And you can see that where the white is right now, there's actually a blue distemper, and then we have very similar gold lines here. And then once again a blue, but a blue, it's a warmer blue than what we found in the middle of the quadriform there. And same here, the gold line here, it goes to a darker line right here. So anyway, what I'll do is I'll take all this information and I'll interpret it based on what I found in other areas around the building, and isolate this with a special varnish that's reversible and we'll paint over it to match the original. Or we might leave this and paint around it so that future generations can see what we've done and where we've come up with our scheme.
That's very good, very interesting.
Maybe do a better job of interpreting it than we do, which,
Well, each generation seems to have a better way of doing things.
that's exactly right.
Yeah, wonderful.
So we're wrapping up the first phase of the restoration at St. Paul's and Randleman, and I plan to come back in September and continue restoring St. Paul's, starting with the north wall outside of the apse. But in the meantime, I'll be traveling to the Capitol and then doing a little bit of work.
In Raleigh.
In Raleigh. No, the Capitol. No, I'm sorry, the U.S. Capitol.
Okay, in Washington, D.C.
That's right. I'll be working the Capitol in Washington D.C. and it's like Mount Vernon. It's St. Paul's is very similar to other projects I work on. It's always in phases. It's when St. Paul's has enough money, or raises enough money to move on to the next phase, then we'll continue working our way around the inside of the building, and the Capitol and Mount Vernon are the same way. It's the way how restoration and conservation happens in the U.S. It's just a little bit at a time, and what's unusual for me is that I get to work so close to home. It's been a real pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.